Imagine your family's most personal and painful secrets suddenly being made public online for a short while, not by journalists or tabloids, but by one of hip-hop's most audacious and controversial Yes, we are talking about 50 Cent, who has gained notoriety by causing chaos whenever he gets the chance. Moreover, his goal this time was more than simply another rapper engaged in a minor dispute. Tiny Harris, his wife, and T, the alleged monarch of the South, were his targets. But what had started out as a social media slur quickly seemed far more dangerous. Such an online outburst might shock a powerful family from the inside out. The claim itself was shocking. A DNA test has led to rumors that King Harris could not be T's biological son. In a matter of minutes, memes, jokes, and harsh commentary flooded the internet. But while the crowd chuckled, something much worse was allegedly happening behind the gates of the Harris home. There were reports that the tension in the household had reached an unanticipated height. Rumor has it that even die-hard fans of the Harris family business were shocked by the violent brawl. According to people with knowledge of the situation, King Harris's growing animosity against his parents and the humiliation brought on by the 50 Cent charges created the perfect storm. Reports state that amid that surge of anger and humiliation, things went beyond far, startling society as a whole. Millions of people mocked King Harris online, making him feel helpless and defenseless, which is said to have caused him to strike out in the worst conceivable way. He allegedly struck his mother, Tiny Harris, after an angry fight. If true, the event would represent a devastating break in a family that had long looked unshakable. So what was the motivation behind this? Was it the ongoing stress of growing up in the shadow of a renowned rapper like T? Was it King's desperate attempt to maintain a nasty street character while living the life of a millionaire's kid? Or did 50 Cent truly want this chaos in the first place? A sophisticated psychological attack meant to erode T's reputation from inside. Tonight, we're sharing every detail of this exciting story. We're examining the viral videos, the mysterious deleted posts, and the toxic sequence of events that could have turned a child against his mother. Was the DNA accusation the cause of this disaster? Or has conflict been brewing for years beneath the surface of the Harris empire? Put on your seatbelts because his story is far more complicated than a simple celebrity feud. The consequences of the alleged betrayal of his own family by the so-called prince of the household have been more startling than anything reality TV could have predicted. You're about to hear the internal story of the Harris family's turmoil, which most people still don't completely understand. Many hip-hop storms have occurred in Atlanta over the years, but few could have predicted the cultural earthquake that is alleged to have taken place within the exclusive walls of the Harris estate. For many years, T and Tiny Harris have positioned themselves as role models for prosperous families, a dynasty built on perseverance, dedication, and hard work. But one digital grenade from the most notorious agitator on the internet was all it needed to turn the castle into a battleground. Unlike most modern conflicts, the destruction did not begin with shouting or fists. It began with a story, which was far more powerful. 50 Cent, who is well known for his deliberate humiliation tactics and constant trolling, rushed into social media and made a comment that instantly caught the attention of the culture. He stated in his post that a DNA test was long overdue to determine King Harris's parentage. It was a type of accusation meant to offend someone while also undermining the essence of their identity. Moreover, 50 Cent wasn't only blasting T, he was directly sowing doubt in the mind of a young man who was already struggling with self-discovery. King Harris was not descended from the Grand Hustle family, according to his nasty captions. He offered everything from physical traits to King's unpredictable behavior as alleged evidence. For the internet, it was entertainment. Another viral celebrity feud that was amusing. For King Harris, though it was very personal, growing up has always been difficult since I am the son of a hip-hop icon. Every move was constantly monitored because of the enormous shadow of T. King's errors were magnified throughout his childhood and early adulthood, and he bravely tried to prove that he wasn't just another wealthy celebrity child. He wanted to be respected by the streets. He wanted to avoid the stigma associated with growing up in a wealthy family. Suddenly, though his toughness wasn't the only thing being questioned, even his ancestry was being questioned. However, rather than focusing on 50 Cent, King is reported to have harbored animosity toward people closest to him. He felt abandoned by his parents' silence. He believed that as the internet mocked him, people who should have stood up for him were silently observing from the sidelines. It is said that the Harris mansion's environment became poisonous practically overnight. Arguments raged throughout the house. Everywhere you looked, accusations were flying. In the midst of the chaos stood Tiny Harris, the mother who had spent years protecting and defending her child. King reportedly accused her of making it possible for him to be the subject of international humiliation. He felt she had failed to defend his reputation, even as millions of others laughed online. What had begun as a heated argument swiftly escalated into something far more dramatic. Then came the supposedly controversial moment on the internet. What began as a private family conversation on the widely reported rumors quickly got out of control. Witnesses claimed that King's emotions were dangerously high when he addressed his parents about the damage being done to his reputation. Tiny Harris made an effort to ease the tension. She reminded her son of the loving, supportive, and affluent life she had worked so hard to establish. But instead of calming down under pressure, King is reported to have snapped. He allegedly struck his mother, according to rumors circulating in business circles. This tragedy shocked even the most ardent supporters of the Harris family brand. If accurate, it wasn't only a domestic conflict, it was a cultural shockwave. In many communities, the bond between a mother and her son is highly valued. Raising a hand against a woman who gave you life is regarded as the ultimate breach of family morality. But at the moment, King Harris was not thinking about etiquette or courtesy. He was thinking about embarrassment, pride, and proving his strength in a culture that consistently questioned his sincerity. He thinks that Tiny's defensive attitude might have given the appearance that he was weak to both his supporters and opponents, such as 50 Cent, who takes pleasure in public humiliation. As stories about the alleged slap began to spread, the internet was closely monitoring the family's personal issues. The reaction was swift and severe. Those who had grown up watching King on television were horrified. If anyone was enjoying the chaos, it was 50 Cent. Instead of giving up, he stepped up his efforts. Memes were more prevalent. On social media, jokes were everywhere. His post essentially ridiculed the entire situation by implying that no true son of T would ever treat his mother with such contempt. It seemed like a masterclass in psychological warfare. Exploiting King's vulnerability, 50 Cent was steadily eroding the reputation that T had spent decades building. The accusation quickly took on a darker tone. King Harris's unpredictable demeanor, untamed energy, and dental choices became the focus of online discussions. Trolls claimed that none of it resembled the calm intelligence people connected to T, which was a harsh conclusion. There were rumors that King had no Tip's DNA at all. In a single, furious wave of posts, 50C successfully tried to brand T as a phony in his own house. It was no longer just gossip. The hip-hop throne that T had built over many years was openly challenged. As these rumors spread on social media, Tiny Harris was under almost unfathomable strain. Family members then revealed that Tiny wasn't only surprised by King's alleged animosity. What most concerned him was the possibility that he would actually believe the rumors. The whispers weren't simply hurting the family in public. They were interfering with their private conversations, eroding trust and turning every argument into a far more dangerous one. During one heated encounter, King allegedly demanded answers at the top of his lungs. His question was more offensive than any internet slur. He wondered if the man he'd always called Pops really his biological father. For Tiny Harris, who had already endured years of public scrutiny with T, it was painful. Suddenly, she was defending more than just her husband. In front of her own child, she had to defend her morals. But the disrespect wasn't the only real sadness, it was the very uncertainty. Once suspicion was planted, it spread like a virus throughout the family. Even people in the music business started to whisper about the issue. Some artists actively criticized King Harris's conduct on social media. Some chose a more modest approach, speaking in private and suggesting that something very disturbing seemed to be happening within those estate walls. King was increasingly criticized online, but insiders painted an even more terrible picture. They suggested that the family relationship had been unstable even prior to the DNA allegations becoming viral. 50 Cent continued to exert pressure on the situation, which now felt like a ticking time bomb. After sensing weakness, instead of backing down, he used even more vicious tactics to escalate the trolling. Soon after, he began posting side-by-side photos of King and T at the same age. The article mocked their alleged differences and advised readers to come to their own conclusions. What had started off as simple trolling had developed into something much more important. It seemed less like jokes, and more like a public courtroom, where the jury was the internet. For T, the situation quickly turned into a strategic nightmare. If King forced 50 Cent to take a DNA test, it would appear like he was responding to his remarks. If King declined, though the internet would still question his legitimacy, both choices ended up in the hands of 50 Cent. The trap was set exactly. The tension quickly damaged public appearances. Soon after the rumors surfaced, fans at a prominent red carpet event sensed something wasn't quite right. On camera, it was evident that the father and son were at odds. T tried to maintain the Southern ruler's composed manner. In the meantime, King Harris seemed like a tempest ready to erupt. King refrained from taking a forceful stance beside his parents. His posture was aggressive, and he was staring at the cameras with a more angry than arrogant expression. After watching the tape, viewers felt as though they were watching a family's silent breakup in real time. King Harris endured severe psychological suffering. Imagine trying to figure out who you are when millions of strangers on the internet question your identity every day. But rather than retreating from the spotlight, King's response was the reverse. He worked harder to project the image he believed would get him respect, determined to become independent. In Atlanta, King began hanging out with harder groups. He was shown on social media in environments that were significantly different from the gated communities in which he grew up. The message was clear to anyone who doubted his royal status. He would show his sincerity in the streets. Videos of King traveling through hazardous areas in Atlanta have surfaced. He appeared to be adamant about rejecting the image of affluence that accompanied him throughout his life. For him, being genuine meant proving to the world that fame or wealth did not protect him. According to internet reports, the alleged slap incident happened when Tiny tried to remind him of the Harris family's ancestry. She reportedly told him that he was descended from grandeur and that it was important to protect his reputation. However, King's response shocked everyone in the room with a sudden outburst of passion. He reportedly said something that devastated the family. "I ain't no Harris," he supposedly yelled. "I am who I am." The family understood at that moment that they might be losing him completely. And that sentence alone showed how badly the argument had broken the family. Their solid bond, which they had painstakingly developed over years of public storytelling and TV appearances, now seemed fragile. What had seemed unbreakable was abruptly broken like glass scattered across the floor. Meanwhile, 50 Cent celebrated what seemed to be a tactical victory by mocking T.I.'s attempts to discipline his son in another offensive video that he posted online. In the video, he mockingly referred to the rapper as a stepdad tip, which elevated the contempt to a whole new level. The hip-hop community closely monitored everything, waiting to see how T would respond. He had made a name for himself as one of the smartest voices in rap, renowned for his perceptive comments and well-reasoned arguments. But this time he seemed oddly quiet. The truth was simple and unpleasant. When your own son is engulfed in chaos, words suddenly become meaningless. How can someone preach about leadership and kingship when their own prince is publicly disobeying a family throne? Tiny Harris was emotionally worn, divided between husband and kid. She reportedly began to disassociate herself from the situation, posting cryptic messages on social media about deadly energy and the need to protect her peace of mind. The Harris household, which had once been close, seemed to have fallen apart. Instead of going as a family, she started to appear to bystanders more often by herself. King continued to roam the streets of Atlanta while Tiny sadly bemoaned the sun and T retreated into his recording studio. The damage to the Harris brand was now undeniable, and she felt like she was losing. Years of carefully constructed family image were suddenly overshadowed by scandal and uncertainty. And T had to face an uncomfortable reality. The biggest threat to 50 Cent's legacy was no longer 50 Cent, but rather the chaos that was erupting within his own home. As the problem reached its last chapter, one question echoed across the culture. Could any family survive such a public betrayal? Could a simple DNA test ever heal mental damage that had already reached this stage? Or had 50 Cent committed the ultimate psychological attack by turning a king's own kid against him? The Harris family, once regarded as the height of hip-hop nobility on reality TV, appeared to be experiencing friction even in Atlanta. They were now at a crossroads that could not be resolved by any public relations strategy. The slap rumor had already affected public opinion, and the world was waiting for the next disastrous incident following the weaponization of the DNA allegations. The most painful blow in the last act of this family drama came from a cold realization rather than a violent conflict. When the noise gradually faded, curiosity shifted from the sight to a deeper question. Some things are never fully restored to their original state once they are shattered. Had there ever been a DNA test? Insiders claim that T finally spoke to King privately after becoming tired of 50 Cent's non-stop mockery. According to whispers, the conversation was more about loyalty than it was about scientific data or lab findings. Despite what the internet suggested, T reportedly told his child that he was the one who raised him, gave him his name, and kept him safe. He explained that blood was not decided by test tubes but rather by the amount of time spent standing next to someone. But the emotional damage had already begun to affect King Harris. Pride had been wounded. Sensing that the Harris family was in danger, 50 Cent took what many saw as his final move. He published a satirical tribute video that contrasted clips of King's disobedient behaviors with T's happy father moments. The internet's disbelief had already changed everything, and ego had been smashed. The message was blatantly clear: even if you call yourself a king, you cannot even govern your own house. T.I. had to make a difficult decision because 50 Cent would always control the narrative as long as he continued to respond to the rumors. Thus it was a difficult lesson for him. He chose silence, which many bystanders interpreted as a sign of surrender, but it may have been his only choice. The men were fighting for pride and reputation, but Tiny Harris was fighting for what remained of her heart. After the alleged incident, Tiny Harris, who had been the Harris family's guardian for years, always defending her children in the face of scandal and criticism, had a horrible realization. This time, though, things were different. According to insiders, Tiny quietly distanced himself from King Harris's pursuits, refusing to finance the reckless street lifestyle that seemed to be consuming him. It was survival, not retaliation. For the first time, the Harris family matriarch chose to put peace before safety, a move that divided the fan base. Some of Tiny's supporters had entirely different opinions, while others praised her for finally establishing boundaries and refusing to tolerate out-of-control behavior. Due to online ridicule and public humiliation, they accused her of abandoning a young man who was clearly hurting. Fans started arguing on social media whether tough love was the right decision or whether the family was falling apart in real time, which escalated into a dispute. In the interim, King Harris found himself further apart from the family circle than before, but he continued to post messages and videos online in an effort to keep up the same daring attitude he had always exhibited. But in some way, the reactions had changed. The likes and remarks that had once encouraged him had gradually evolved into mockery. It was difficult to ignore the stark irony that the internet, which had earlier seen him as a budding celebrity, treated him like another viral joke. For years, King had tried to overcome the impression that he was a pampered star child, but the chaos had turned him into the thing he feared most. The domestic prince suddenly seemed to be a monarch without a realm, a headline, a meme, a depiction of internet drama that people laughed about before moving on to the next scandal. The damage was already done. Therefore, it didn't really matter if the DNA rumors were true. The tale had removed the invisible bubble that had previously protected him as the son of a great musician, making him seem like just another young man in Atlanta, who was desperately trying to prove his toughness to a culture that had already moved on. A few weeks later, during an unusual and very candid podcast interview, T was asked directly about his family's circumstances, and the man known as the King of the South did not respond with his usual swagger of confidence. Instead, his voice carried an unusual weight as he talked about the dangers of the digital era and how pride and ego may destroy even the strongest households. T never addressed the supposed altercation and never confirmed any DNA claims, and the public had never heard him make anything like a passionate confession. Instead, he concentrated on something very